The small town of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. It was a quiet, unremarkable town, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests. Life moved slowly here, with nothing more exciting than the annual fall festival or a high school football game to stir things up. But all of that changed one cold November morning when tragedy struck. Laura and Daniel Carter were well liked in Willow Creek. They weren't flashy or loud. They were just good people who worked hard and cared for their neighbors. Laura taught second grade at the local elementary school, while Daniel ran the hardware store downtown. Their lives revolved around their only son, Ethan, a shy but curious 13-year-old who loved books and tinkering with gadgets. The Carters were the kind of family that made people smile, until the day their car skidded off an icy road late one night. The accident happened on a stretch of highway outside of town. No one knew exactly what caused it. Some said black ice had formed unexpectedly. Others whispered about how the road had always felt strange, like it didn't belong there. Whatever the reason, the crash left Laura and Daniel dead, and the entire town mourned their loss. Ethan stood silently at the funeral, his face pale and expressionless. He wore a suit 2 sizes too big, borrowed from his uncle Matthew because he didn't own anything formal. His dark hair hung over his eyes and he kept his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. People tried to comfort him, patting his shoulder or offering soft words, but Ethan didn't respond. He just stared at the caskets as if waiting for something to happen. After the service, Ethan went to live with Matthew, his father's younger brother. Matthew wasn't prepared for this kind of responsibility. A bachelor in his mid-30s, he spent most of his time fishing or working odd jobs around town. He did his best to look after Ethan, but parenting wasn't something he'd ever imagined doing. Still, he promised himself, and everyone else, that he would take care of his nephew. For the first few days, Ethan barely spoke. He stayed in his room, reading books or staring out the window. Matthew tried to engage him, asking if he wanted to go fishing or play video games, but Ethan always shook his head. "He's grieving," people told Matthew. "Give him time." But time ran out faster than anyone expected. It was a Friday evening when Ethan disappeared. Matthew had gone to the grocery store, leaving Ethan alone for less than an hour. When he returned, the house was eerily quiet. At first, Matthew thought maybe Ethan had gone for a walk, but as the hours passed and the boy didn't come back, panic set in. Matthew called the sheriff's office, and soon the whole town was searching for Ethan. Flyers with his picture were posted on lampposts and bulletin boards. Volunteers combed through the woods and checked abandoned buildings. Neighbors gathered in groups calling out his name under the fading autumn sun. But no matter how hard they looked, there was no sign of him. Detectives came to question Matthew, trying to piece together what might have happened. Had Ethan run away? Was he taken by someone? Matthew couldn't answer their questions. All he could do was replay those final moments in his mind. The way Ethan had sat quietly at the kitchen table before he left, sipping a glass of orange juice without saying a word. As the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The search parties grew smaller, and eventually, they stopped altogether. The flyers faded in the rain, and life in Willow Creek slowly returned to normal. But for Matthew, things would never be the same. He blamed himself for not keeping a closer eye on Ethan. What if he hadn't gone to the store that night? What if he'd noticed something was wrong? Ethan's disappearance became part of the town's lore, a story told in hushed tones whenever someone mentioned the Carters. People speculated endlessly about what might have happened. Some thought he had wandered into the woods and gotten lost. Others believed he had been kidnapped, though no ransom demands were ever made. A few even whispered about supernatural explanations, pointing to the strange legends surrounding the forest near the highway where the accident occurred. Among those who refused to let the mystery rest was Olivia Meyer, Ethan's childhood friend. She was 16, 2 years older than Ethan, but they had been inseparable growing up. They used to spend hours building forts in her backyard or exploring the woods behind the school. After Ethan vanished, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something darker than grief had taken him away. She often visited Matthew, bringing meals or simply sitting with him in silence. Sometimes she would ask questions about the night Ethan disappeared. hoping to find some clue that everyone else had missed. Matthew appreciated her company, but he rarely had answers. "I don't know why he left," he would say, shaking his head. "I wish I did." Olivia also talked to others in town, piecing together bits of information. She learned that several people claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky the night Ethan went missing. Others reported hearing unusual noises coming from the forest. None of it made sense, but it fueled Olivia's determination to uncover the truth. One evening, as she sat in her room flipping through old photos of her and Ethan, Olivia noticed something odd. In one picture taken shortly before the accident, Ethan was standing near the edge of the woods looking directly at the camera. Behind him, partially hidden by the trees, was a figure wearing a long coat and holding what appeared to be a lantern. Olivia squinted at the image, trying to make out more details, but the figure was blurry, almost indistinct. Her heart raced as she realized she had never seen this person before. Who were they? And why hadn't anyone mentioned them during the investigation? Determined to find answers, Olivia decided to revisit the spot where the photo was taken. Maybe there was something there, a clue, a trail, anything that could help her understand what had happened to Ethan. The next morning, armed with a flashlight and a notebook, Olivia set out for the woods. The air was crisp, and the ground was covered in fallen leaves. As she walked deeper into the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made her jump. But she pressed on, driven by the memory of her friend and the need to bring him home. When she reached the area where the photo had been taken, she stopped and looked around. There was nothing remarkable about the spot, a cluster of trees, a patch of dirt, but Olivia felt drawn to it. She knelt down and began examining the ground, brushing away leaves and dirt with her hands. After a few minutes, she found something, a small metal object half buried in the soil. It looked like a key, tarnished and worn, but still intact. Olivia held the key up to the light, turning it over in her fingers. Where did it come from and what did it unlock? She slipped it into her pocket, deciding to show it to Matthew later. For now, she continued searching, hoping to find more clues. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Olivia reluctantly headed back toward town. She didn't have any concrete answers yet, but she felt closer to understanding what had happened to Ethan. Somewhere in these woods, she believed, lay the truth, and she was determined to find it, no matter how long it took. Back in Willow Creek, life carried on as usual for most people. But for Matthew and Olivia, the search for Ethan was far from over. They clung to the hope that someday, somehow, they would see him again. Until then, the questions lingered, unanswered and haunting, like whispers carried on the wind. 5 years had passed since Ethan Carter vanished from Willow Creek, but the memory of him still lingered in the town like a shadow that refused to fade. The Carters' house stood empty, its windows dark, and its garden overgrown with weeds. People avoided walking past it, claiming it gave them an uneasy feeling. Matthew, Ethan's uncle, had moved away shortly after the search ended, unable to face the constant reminders of his failure. He sent letters to Olivia every now and then, updating her on his life, but they were brief and distant, as if he didn't want to talk about the past. Olivia Meyer, now 21, stayed in Willow Creek. She worked at the local library, surrounded by books and quiet corners where she could think. Despite the passage of time, she hadn't given up on finding Ethan. Every spare moment she had, she spent researching or revisiting the places connected to his disappearance. The key she'd found in the woods 5 years earlier remained tucked inside a small wooden box under her bed. She didn't know what it unlocked, but it was a tangible piece of the puzzle, and she clung to it like a lifeline. The town itself seemed quieter than before. Some families had moved away while new ones had arrived, unaware of the story that hung over Willow Creek like a ghost. But for those who remembered, the mystery of Ethan's disappearance was never far from their minds. It came up during late night, conversations at the diner, or when someone mentioned the forest outside of town. "Do you think he's still alive?" people would ask each other, though no one ever had an answer. One rainy evening, everything changed. Sheriff Laura Bennett was sitting in her office, sipping coffee and going over paperwork, when the door creaked open. Startled, she looked up to see a man standing there, soaked from head to toe. His clothes were ragged, his hair matted, and his face unshaven. He looked like someone who had been living rough for a long time. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the man shuffled forward, clutching a worn-out notebook in his hands. "Is this the sheriff's office?" he asked, his voice hoarse and uncertain. "It is," Laura replied, setting her cup down. "Can I help you?" The man hesitated, glancing around the room as if expecting someone to jump out at him. Finally, he nodded. "I'm Ryan Holt," he said. I have information about Ethan Carter." Laura froze. The name sent a chill down her spine. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years, but it still carried weight. Slowly, she gestured for Ryan to sit down. "Tell me what you know," she said, grabbing a pen and notepad. Ryan took a deep breath, clearly struggling to gather his thoughts. "I didn't mean to get involved," he began. "I was just passing through town back then, 5 years ago maybe. I was staying in the woods because I didn't have anywhere else to go. That's when I saw him." "Saw who?" Laura prompted. "Ethan," Ryan said. "He wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. She was strange, not like anyone I'd ever met before. Her name was Evelyn Drake." Laura leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What do you mean, strange?" Ryan frowned, searching for the right words. "She wore gloves all the time, even in the heat. And her voice, it sounded wrong, like it was echoing even when she whispered. I thought maybe she was sick or something, but..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "It wasn't natural." "Where did you see them?" Laura asked. "In a cabin," Ryan replied. "Deep in the woods. They were hiding there, I think. I only caught glimpses, but I remember seeing symbols carved into the walls. Weird stuff like nothing I'd ever seen before." Laura scribbled notes furiously, her mind racing. "Did you talk to them? Did they say anything?" Ryan nodded. "Not much. I tried to stay hidden, but one day Evelyn caught me snooping around. She didn't seem surprised to see me, though. She acted like she already knew I was there. She told me Ethan was special, that he had something inside him she needed." "Needed for what?" Laura pressed. "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "But whatever it was, it scared me. I stuck around for a little while longer trying to figure out what they were doing, but then I realized how dangerous it was. So I left." Laura studied him carefully, weighing his story. "Why are you coming forward now?" she asked. "It's been 5 years." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Because I can't forget," he said quietly. "And because I think she's still out there. If she finds another kid like Ethan..." His voice trailed off, but Laura understood. This wasn't just about solving a cold case anymore. It was about preventing something worse from happening. The next morning, Laura called Deputy Aaron Cole into her office to discuss Ryan's claims. Aaron was skeptical at first, dismissing the story as the ramblings of a drifter. But Laura insisted they investigate further. "We owe it to Ethan, and to this town, to follow up on any lead we get," she said firmly. Reluctantly, Aaron agreed. Together, they decided to bring Olivia into the investigation. After all, she had spent years searching for answers and might have insights that could help. When Laura explained Ryan's story to her, Olivia's eyes lit up with a mix of hope and fear. "He's alive," she whispered, clutching the edge of the desk. "Ethan's alive." "We don't know that for sure yet," Laura cautioned, "but it's worth checking out." With Ryan's guidance, they planned a trip to the woods to locate the cabin he described. Olivia volunteered to join them, determined to see this through. As they prepared for the journey, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were finally close to uncovering the truth. The group set out early the following morning, armed with flashlights, maps, and supplies. Ryan led the way, navigating the dense forest with surprising confidence despite his years away. The air was cool and damp, and the ground was covered in moss and fallen leaves. Birds chirped overhead, but otherwise the woods were eerily silent. As they walked, Ryan recounted more details about his encounter with Evelyn and Ethan. She kept talking about dimensions, he said. Other worlds. At first I thought she was crazy, but then I started noticing things. Lights in the sky, shadows moving where they shouldn't be. It felt like the rules didn't apply there. What kind of symbols did you see in the cabin? Laura asked. Circles, lines, weird shapes, Ryan replied. Some of them looked ancient, like they belonged to some forgotten language. Others were just wrong, like they hurt your eyes if you stared at them too long. Olivia listened intently, her heart pounding. Could Evelyn have been experimenting with something supernatural? It sounded far-fetched, but after 5 years of dead ends, she was willing to consider anything. After several hours of hiking, they reached a clearing where an old, weathered cabin stood. Its wooden walls were warped and gray with age, and vines crept up its sides like skeletal fingers. The windows were boarded up and the roof sagged under the weight of years of neglect. It looked abandoned, but there was something unsettling about the place, a sense that it didn't belong in the world anymore. This is it, Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. They approached cautiously, their footsteps crunching softly on the dry leaves. Laura pushed open the creaky door, revealing a dim interior filled with dust and cobwebs. The air smelled musty, and the floorboards groaned beneath their weight as they stepped inside. At first glance, the cabin appeared ordinary, just a small, empty space with a fireplace and a few pieces of broken furniture. But as they looked closer, they began to notice the details Ryan had described. Symbols were carved into the walls and floors, intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. In the center of the room was a large circle made of ash and chalk, surrounded by candles that had long since burned out. Olivia knelt down to examine the markings more closely. Some of them matched designs she'd seen in old books about mysticism and folklore. Others were completely unfamiliar, sending a shiver down her spine. This isn't random, she murmured. Someone put a lot of thought into this. Laura nodded grimly. Let's split up and see if we can find anything else. While Aaron and Ryan searched the perimeter, Laura and Olivia focused on the main room. They sifted through debris, looking for anything that might offer clues about Evelyn's plans. It wasn't until Olivia reached into a crack in the floorboards that she found something significant, a leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked and faded, but the pages inside were intact. Flipping through them, Olivia discovered entries written in neat, precise handwriting. The author referred to herself as Evelyn Drake and detailed experiments involving trans-dimensional travel. Several passages mentioned Ethan by name, describing him as a key to unlocking a portal between worlds. She was using him, Olivia said, her voice trembling. She wanted to open a door to somewhere else. Laura took the journal from her, scanning the pages quickly. If this is true, we need to find her, she said, before she tries again. As they regrouped outside the cabin, the weight of their discovery settled over them. Whatever Evelyn Drake had been planning, it was far bigger and far darker than any of them had imagined. And if she was still out there, the danger wasn't over. For Olivia, the journal was proof that Ethan was alive, or at least had been 5 years ago. She clutched it tightly, vowing to do whatever it took to bring him home. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, she felt like they were on the right path. And somewhere deep in the woods, the wind stirred, carrying whispers of secrets waiting to be uncovered. The discovery of Evelyn Drake's journal changed everything. It gave Sheriff Laura Bennett and her team a clear direction to follow, but it also raised more questions than answers. The symbols carved into the cabin walls, the ash circle, and the detailed notes about trans-dimensional travel painted a picture of something far beyond ordinary human understanding. For Olivia Meyer, the journal was both a beacon of hope and a source of dread. While it confirmed that Ethan had been alive 5 years ago, it also hinted at forces darker and stranger than anyone could have imagined. Back in Willow Creek, Laura assembled a small team to analyze the journal and plan their next steps. Deputy Aaron Cole was skeptical but willing to help, while Olivia threw herself into the investigation with unwavering determination. Ryan Holt, the drifter who had brought them to the cabin, remained an enigma. He alternated between nervousness and quiet resolve, offering bits of information when pressed but otherwise keeping to himself. As they pored over the journal, its contents grew increasingly unsettling. Evelyn Drake described her experiments in chilling detail, referring to Ethan as a vessel for opening a portal to another realm. She wrote about how his brainwave patterns were uniquely suited to resonate with frequencies from other dimensions. Diagrams accompanied her notes, showing intricate designs meant to channel energy. Some pages contained sketches of shadowy figures, creatures with elongated limbs and hollow eyes, that seemed to watch from the edges of the drawings. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that these weren't just ideas on paper. They were plans carefully laid out and executed. And if Evelyn had succeeded even partially, the consequences could be catastrophic. "What does she mean by opening a door?" Aaron asked one evening as they sat around a table in the sheriff's office. The room was dimly lit, the only sound the soft rustling of pages as they flipped through the journal. "I don't know," Laura admitted, rubbing her temples. "But whatever it is, it's not natural. These symbols, these rituals, they're not random. Someone taught her this stuff." Ryan spoke up hesitantly. She said there are places between worlds, places we can't see or touch. But if you know how to reach them." His voice trailed off and he looked down at his hands. "She believed she could bring things back, things that shouldn't exist here." The room fell silent. No one wanted to imagine what those things might be. While the adults debated the journal's meaning, Olivia found herself drawn to the personal details scattered throughout its pages. Evelyn often wrote about her own life, revealing glimpses of a woman consumed by obsession. She mentioned growing up in a town much like Willow Creek, where her interest in science and the unknown set her apart from others. Her parents dismissed her theories as nonsense, but she refused to give up. Over time, she became isolated, dedicating herself entirely to her research. One entry stood out to Olivia. In it, Evelyn described meeting someone, a mentor of sorts, who introduced her to concepts far beyond conventional science. "He showed me the truth," she wrote. "That reality is layered like an onion. Peel back one layer and you find another beneath it. But some layers are dangerous. They hold secrets best left buried." Olivia shivered as she read those words. Whoever this mentor was, he had clearly influenced Evelyn deeply. Was he still involved? Or had Evelyn gone rogue, pursuing her experiments alone? Determined to learn more, Olivia spent hours in the library, combing through books on mythology, folklore, and fringe science. She found references to ancient practices meant to communicate with other realms, but none matched the precision of Evelyn's methods. It was as if Evelyn had taken fragments of forgotten knowledge and pieced them together into something new and terrifying. Meanwhile, Ryan began having nightmares. Vivid, jarring dreams of the cabin and the symbols haunted him every time he closed his eyes. In one dream, he saw Ethan standing in the ash circle surrounded by glowing lights. Evelyn stood nearby, chanting in a language Ryan didn't recognize. Shadows moved in the corners of his vision, twisting and writhing like living smoke. When he woke, he felt exhausted, as though he hadn't slept at all. He confided in Olivia one afternoon, sitting on a bench outside the sheriff's office. "I think she's still out there," he said quietly. "And I think she knows we're looking for her." Olivia frowned. "Do you think she'll come after us?" Ryan hesitated before nodding. "If she thinks we're getting too close, yeah. She's not afraid to hurt people to protect her work." The thought sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She had always believed finding Ethan would be the hardest part. Now, she realized that confronting Evelyn might be even more dangerous. Despite the risks, the group decided to return to the cabin. They needed to search it more thoroughly, hoping to uncover additional clues about Evelyn's whereabouts. This time they came prepared not just with flashlights and supplies, but with tools designed to disrupt whatever energy Evelyn might have been harnessing. Laura had consulted a local historian who specialized in occult practices, and he suggested using salt and iron to neutralize supernatural forces, though none of them fully understood why. They trusted his advice. On the morning of their second trip, the air felt heavier than before. charged with an unspoken tension. The sky was overcast, and a cold breeze swept through the trees as they made their way into the forest. Ryan led the way again, his movements cautious but purposeful. He seemed to sense the weight of what lay ahead, his earlier bravado replaced by grim determination. When they reached the cabin, it looked unchanged, its weathered exterior blending seamlessly with the surrounding woods. But as they stepped inside, something felt different. The air was colder, almost suffocating, and the symbols on the wall seemed to pulse faintly as if alive. "Spread out," Laura instructed, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "Look for anything unusual." Olivia knelt by the ash circle, sprinkling salt along its edges as the historian had advised. As she worked, she noticed something glinting beneath the floorboards. Carefully, she pried them loose and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a collection of strange objects, crystals, dried herbs, and a vial filled with a dark liquid. A scrap of paper lay at the bottom, bearing a single sentence written in Evelyn's handwriting. "The key lies within." "The key?" Aaron echoed, peering over Olivia's shoulder. "What does that mean?" Olivia's mind raced. The phrase reminded her of the tarnished key she'd found in the woods 5 years earlier, the one she still kept in a box under her bed. Could it be connected? She didn't say anything aloud, but the possibility lingered in her thoughts. As they continued searching, Ryan stumbled upon a hidden compartment behind a loose plank in the wall. Inside was another journal, smaller and more battered than the first. Its pages were filled with frantic scribbles, detailing Evelyn's growing desperation. She wrote about failures and setbacks, blaming interference from unseen forces for disrupting her experiments. One passage caught Olivia's attention. "He resists. The boy fights me at every turn. But I cannot stop now. The door is nearly open." Ethan was resisting her. The realization filled Olivia with a mix of pride and fear. If Ethan had fought back, maybe he was still alive. Maybe he was still fighting. By the time they finished their search, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. As they packed up their supplies, Ryan suddenly froze, his eyes wide with alarm. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first, no one else heard anything. Then faintly, a low hum began to rise from the ground, vibrating through their shoes and into their bones. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the sound. The air grew colder, and the shadows lengthened unnaturally. "We need to leave." "Now," Laura said sharply, grabbing her bag. They hurried out of the cabin. Their footsteps crunched everyone except Ryan, who lingered near the doorway, staring back at the glowing symbols. "She's watching," he muttered under his breath. "She knows we're here." Olivia grabbed his arm, pulling him away. "Come on, we can't stay." As they ran through the woods, the hum faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. None of them spoke until they reached the edge of the forest, where the familiar sights and sounds of Willow Creek greeted them like a comforting embrace. Once they were safely back in town, Laura called a meeting to discuss their findings. The journals, the objects in the box, and the strange events at the cabin all pointed to one conclusion. Evelyn Drake's work wasn't finished. Whatever she had been trying to achieve, she was still pursuing it, and Ethan was at the center of it. For Olivia, the stakes had never been higher. She clutched the small wooden box tightly, thinking of the key at home and the message scrawled on the scrap of paper. "The key lies within." Whether it referred to the physical key or something deeper, she didn't know. But one thing was certain: they were running out of time. Somewhere Evelyn Drake was waiting. And when she struck next, nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed the second trip to the cabin were filled with tension and unease. The group, Laura, Aaron, Olivia, and Ryan, knew they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding, but they couldn't afford to back down. Every clue they uncovered brought them closer to Ethan, but it also deepened the mystery surrounding Evelyn Drake. Her journals hinted at a world where science and the supernatural intertwined, a place where rules didn't apply and danger lurked. In every shadow, Olivia spent hours poring over the items they had found in the hidden compartment of the cabin. The small wooden box contained crystals, dried herbs, and a vial of dark liquid, all of which seemed out of place in the modern world. She carefully examined each object, trying to make sense of its purpose. The crystals felt cold to the touch, even in the warmth of her room, and the herbs smelled faintly of earth and decay, but it was the vial that intrigued her most. Its contents shimmered faintly as though alive, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it held some kind of power. The scrap of paper inside the box weighed heavily on her mind. The key lies within. Olivia kept thinking about the tarnished key she discovered 5 years earlier, tucked away under her bed. Could it unlock something related to Evelyn's experiments? Or was the message more symbolic, referring to Ethan himself? She wasn't sure, but the phrase echoed in her thoughts like a riddle waiting to be solved. Ryan, meanwhile, became increasingly agitated. He claimed he could feel Evelyn's presence everywhere he went, watching him through windows or lurking in the corners of crowded rooms. At night, his dreams grew worse, filled with visions of the ash circle glowing brighter and brighter until it consumed everything around him. Shadows twisted into monstrous shapes, and voices whispered in languages he didn't recognize. When he woke, his heart raced and his hands trembled. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just stress, but deep down he knew better. One evening, as the group gathered in Laura's office to review their findings, Ryan finally broke his silence. "She's not human," he blurted out, his voice trembling. Everyone turned to look at him, startled by the intensity in his tone. "I mean, maybe she started out that way, but whatever she's doing, it's changing her. Those gloves she wears, they're not just for show. I think she's hiding something wrong with her skin." Laura frowned, leaning forward. "What do you mean?" Ryan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "When I first met her, I thought she was sick. Her voice sounded strange, like it came from somewhere else. And her movements, they weren't quite right. It's like she's not fully here anymore. Like part of her is already somewhere else." The room fell silent as the weight of Ryan's words sank in. If what he said was true, then Evelyn wasn't just experimenting with other dimensions. She might have already crossed over, at least partially. The implications were terrifying. Determined to find answers, Olivia decided to revisit the forest where she had found the key 5 years ago. She hoped that returning to the spot might trigger a memory or reveal another clue. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, she set out early one morning before anyone else was awake. The air was crisp, and dew clung to the grass as she made her way toward the edge of the woods. As she walked deeper into the trees, the atmosphere shifted. The sunlight filtered weakly through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Birds chirped overhead, but their songs felt muted, almost hesitant. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, though she saw no one. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than it should, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. When she reached the area where she had found the key, she stopped and knelt down, brushing leaves aside with her hands. The ground looked undisturbed, but something caught her eye, a patch of dirt darker than the rest. Digging carefully, she uncovered a small metal plate embedded in the soil. It was rusted and worn, but etched into its surface were symbols similar to those in Evelyn's journals. Her heart raced as she traced the markings with her fingers. They matched the ones in the cabin, the same intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Beneath the plate was a hollow space containing another object, a folded piece of parchment. Unfolding it, Olivia saw a map drawn in faded ink. Lines connected various points in the forest, leading to a single location marked with an X. "This has to mean something," she whispered to herself, tucking the map into her pocket. Whatever it led to, she knew it was important. Back in town, Olivia shared her discovery with the others. Laura studied the map closely, comparing it to the layout of the forest. "This looks like it's pointing to a clearing farther north," she said. "It's not far from the cabin, but it's deeper in the woods. We'll need to check it out." They planned another trip for the following day, this time bringing additional supplies. Laura insisted on involving Deputy Aaron Cole, who reluctantly agreed despite his lingering skepticism. Ryan volunteered to come along, though his nerves were clearly frayed. Olivia, however, remained resolute, driven by the hope of finding Ethan. The journey to the marked location was grueling. The terrain became rougher the farther they ventured, with thick underbrush and uneven ground slowing their progress. As they neared the clearing, the air grew colder, and the sounds of wildlife faded into silence. When they finally emerged into the open space, they were greeted by an unsettling sight. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone structure shaped like a ring. It was ancient, covered in moss and lichen, but the carvings etched into its surface were unmistakable, the same symbols that had haunted their investigation since the beginning. At the base of the ring lay scattered remnants of Evelyn's rituals, candles melted into pools of wax, bundles of herbs tied with string, and shards of glass glinting faintly in the dim light. "What is this place?" Aaron asked, his voice tinged with awe and fear. "It's a gateway," Ryan murmured, staring at the ring with wide eyes. "She used it to reach the other side." Olivia stepped closer, examining the carvings more closely. They pulsed faintly, as though responding to her presence. She pulled out the tarnished key from her bag, holding it up to the light. For a moment, she thought she saw the symbols on the ring align with the grooves on the key, but when she blinked, the connection disappeared. Before anyone could say anything, a low hum began to rise from the ground, vibrating through their shoes and into their bones. The symbols on the ring glowed brighter, casting an eerie light across the clearing. Shadows moved unnaturally, twisting and writhing like living smoke. The wind picked up, carrying whispers in a language none of them recognized. "We need to leave," Laura said sharply, grabbing her bag. "Now." But Olivia hesitated, unable to tear her gaze away from the glowing ring. She felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to step closer. Images flashed in her mind. Ethan standing in the ash circle surrounded by light, Evelyn chanting in a voice that echoed endlessly, and behind them both, a vast expanse of darkness stretching infinitely in every direction. "Olivia!" Laura shouted, snapping her out of her trance. "Come on!" Reluctantly, Olivia turned away, clutching the key tightly in her hand. As they hurried back toward the safety of the town, the hum faded, leaving behind an oppressive silence. None of them spoke until they reached the edge of the forest, where the familiar sights and sounds of Willow Creek greeted them like a lifeline. That night, Olivia dreamed of Ethan. He stood in the clearing, gazing at the glowing ring with a mixture of fear and resolve. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "She's coming." When she woke, her heart was pounding, and the key she had placed on her bedside table was warm to the touch. She stared at it for a long time, wondering if it truly held the answers they were searching for, or if using it would unleash something far worse than they could imagine. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: Evelyn Drake was closer than ever, and time was running out. The dream stayed with Olivia for days, lingering in her mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. Ethan's voice echoed in her thoughts, his plea for help, his warning about Evelyn. She replayed the image of him standing near the glowing ring, over and over again, trying to decipher its meaning. Was it real, or was it just her subconscious piecing together fragments of fear and hope? Either way, it felt too vivid to ignore. Laura noticed the change in Olivia right away. The young woman had always been determined, but now there was a new urgency in her movements, a sharpness in her gaze. When they met at the sheriff's office to discuss their next steps, Laura saw the toll the investigation was taking on her. Dark circles framed Olivia's eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the notes they'd gathered. Still, her resolve hadn't wavered. "We can't wait any longer," Olivia said firmly. "If that ring is what Evelyn's been using, we need to confront her. We can't let her finish whatever she's planning." Laura hesitated, torn between caution and action. She wanted to protect Olivia and everyone else involved, but she also knew time was against them. If Evelyn truly intended to open a portal to another realm, the consequences could be catastrophic. "We'll go back," she finally agreed. "But this time we prepare better. We can't walk into this blind." Preparations took most of the day. They consulted the local historian again, who suggested creating protective charms using salt, iron, and herbs, similar to those found in Evelyn's box. He warned them that such objects wouldn't guarantee safety, but might provide some defense against unnatural forces. Laura and Aaron worked together to assemble makeshift tools, bags filled with salt, iron rods wrapped in cloth, and vials of holy water blessed by a priest from the nearby church. Ryan remained uneasy throughout the process, pacing nervously as if expecting an attack at any moment. When Olivia asked him what was wrong, he admitted he felt like they were being watched, not just by Evelyn but by something else. "It's not just her anymore," he muttered. "Whatever she's bringing through, it's already here, his." Words sent a chill down Olivia's spine, but she forced herself to focus. They couldn't afford to hesitate now. Not when Ethan's life, and possibly the safety of the entire town, depended on their actions. The group set out at dawn, heading back toward the clearing with the stone ring. The forest seemed quieter than usual, as though holding its breath. Birds didn't sing, and even the rustling of leaves sounded muted. As they approached the clearing, the air grew colder, biting at their skin despite the warmth of the morning sun. When they reached the site, the scene was eerily unchanged. The massive stone ring stood in the center, its carvings glowing faintly even in daylight. Scattered around it were remnants of Evelyn's rituals, burnt candles, dried herbs, and shards of glass glinting like broken stars. But something new caught their attention, fresh footprints leading directly to the ring. "She's been here recently," Aaron whispered, crouching to examine the tracks. "And she wasn't alone." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Could Ethan be with her? She scanned the area, searching for any sign of movement, but the clearing was empty. Only the oppressive silence greeted them. "Let's stay focused," Laura said, gripping her flashlight tightly. "We don't know what we're walking into." They moved cautiously toward the ring, keeping their protective items close. As they drew nearer, the symbols began to pulse brighter, casting an otherworldly light across the clearing. Shadows danced unnaturally, twisting and writhing as if alive. A low hum vibrated through the ground, growing louder with each step. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind the ring. It was Evelyn Drake. She looked different than Ryan had described. Older, thinner, almost translucent. Her long black gloves covered her hands completely, and her face was pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to look straight through them. Her lips curled into a cold smile as she regarded the intruders. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me," she said, her voice echoing unnaturally. "You've meddled enough, haven't you?" Olivia stepped forward, clutching the tarnished key in her hand. "Where's Ethan?" she demanded, her voice steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. Evelyn tilted her head, studying Olivia. Curiously, "Ah yes, the boy. Such potential, such resistance. He's stronger than I anticipated, but he won't last much longer." Her gaze shifted to the key in Olivia's grasp. "How quaint. You think that little trinket will save him? Save yourselves?" "What are you doing here?" Laura asked sharply, stepping beside Olivia. "Why are you messing with things you don't understand?" Evelyn laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Don't understand? Oh, dear Sheriff, I understand far more than you ever could. This world is stagnant, dying under the weight of ignorance. But beyond this veil lies knowledge, power, evolution. All I need is the right vessel to unlock it." "You mean Ethan?" Olivia spat, anger rising in her chest. "He's not your experiment, he's a person." "A necessary sacrifice," Evelyn replied coolly. "For greatness, sacrifices must be made." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The symbols on the ring flared brilliantly, bathing the clearing in blinding light. Shadows swirled violently, coalescing into monstrous shapes that loomed menacingly. Whispers filled the air, overlapping voices speaking in languages none of them recognized. "Stop this," Ryan shouted, throwing a handful of salt toward the ring. The gesture seemed to disrupt the energy momentarily, causing the light to flicker. Seizing the opportunity, Olivia lunged forward, breaking the circle of candles surrounding the ring. Evelyn screamed in fury, her form wavering as if struggling to maintain cohesion. "Fools!" she shrieked. "Do you have any idea what you've unleashed?" The clearing erupted into chaos. The ground cracked, splitting open to reveal darkness below. Winds howled, whipping debris into the air. Through the storm, Olivia spotted Ethan lying unconscious near the base of the ring, his body frail and pale. She raced to his side, shaking him gently. "Ethan, wake up," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stirred weakly, his eyes fluttering open. "Olivia," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "We need to get out of here," Laura yelled, grabbing Olivia's arm. "Now!" Ryan tackled Evelyn, pinning her to the ground and giving the others a chance to escape. The woman thrashed wildly, her screams piercing the air, but Ryan held firm. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll hold her off." Without hesitation, Laura and Aaron helped Olivia carry Ethan away from the clearing. Behind them, the ring collapsed inward, the ground swallowing it whole. The howling winds died down, leaving an eerie stillness in their wake. As they stumbled out of the forest, exhaustion and relief washed over them. Ethan clung to Olivia, his body trembling as he tried to process everything that had happened. His memories were fragmented, but one thing was clear. Evelyn had used him, manipulated him, and pushed him to the brink of destruction. Back in Willow Creek, the group regrouped at Laura's office. Ethan was taken to the hospital for observation, while the others debriefed about the events in the clearing. Ryan never returned, vanishing without a trace after his confrontation with Evelyn. Some believed he had sacrificed himself to buy them time. Others whispered that he might have crossed over into another realm entirely. For Olivia, the nightmare wasn't over. Though Ethan was safe, the thought of Evelyn's threats lingered in her mind. What had she unleashed? And would it come back to haunt them? As the sun set over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the quiet streets, the townspeople went about their lives unaware of the danger that had passed, or the possibility that it might return. But for those who had faced Evelyn Drake, the scars would never fully heal. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, the whispers began again. Ethan's recovery was slow but steady. The doctors couldn't explain his condition beyond vague terms like extreme exhaustion and psychological trauma. To Olivia, it felt like he had been drained of energy, of spirit, of life itself. He spent most of his days in silence, staring out the window of his hospital room or flipping through old books without really reading them. When he did speak, his words were hesitant, as if he were afraid of saying too much. Olivia stayed by his side as much as she could, determined to help him heal. She brought him snacks from the diner downtown, shared stories about their childhood, and even tried to coax him into playing board games. But Ethan seemed distant, lost in a world only he could see. Sometimes when she asked him what he remembered about Evelyn or the stone ring, he would shake his head and change the subject. It was clear that whatever he had endured still haunted him. "He'll come around," Laura assured her one afternoon as they sat in the hospital cafeteria. "Give him time." "I hope so," Olivia replied quietly. "But I can't stop thinking about what Evelyn said, about unleashing something." Laura frowned, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "We stopped her ritual. That has to count for something, right?" "Does it?" Olivia countered. "What if we only delayed her? What if she finds another way?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered. Neither of them wanted to admit how powerless they felt against forces they barely understood. In the weeks that followed, life in Willow Creek began to return to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could be after everything that had happened. People talked less about Ethan's disappearance now that he was back, though rumors about the glowing ring and Evelyn Drake still circulated among those who knew the truth. For the most part, however, the town carried on as usual. Kids played in the park, farmers tended their fields, and the diner served its usual crowd of locals. But Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The forest outside of town felt darker somehow, heavier, as if it were holding its breath. At night, she often dreamed of the clearing, the symbols pulsing with light, the shadows twisting unnaturally, and Evelyn's cold voice promising revenge. Each morning, she woke up drenched in sweat, clutching the tarnished key tightly in her hand. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, she finally decided to confront the key directly. She placed it on the table in front of her and studied it carefully, turning it over in the dim lamplight. Its grooves matched the carvings on the stone ring perfectly, she realized. Whatever its purpose, it was tied to Evelyn's experiments and, possibly, to closing the door she had tried to open. With trembling hands, Olivia packed a small bag with supplies: the key, a flashlight, a vial of holy water, and a pouch of salt. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Not Laura, not Aaron, not even Ethan. This was something she needed to do alone. The journey to the clearing felt longer than before, the path through the forest eerily silent. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale light through the trees. As Olivia approached the site, she noticed subtle changes. The ground where the stone ring had stood was scorched black, as if burned by an intense heat. Scattered shards of glass glittered in the dirt, and the air smelled faintly of sulfur. She knelt down, examining the area closely. Something shimmered faintly in the center of the scorched earth. A fragment of the ring, cracked and broken but still glowing faintly. Symbols etched into its surface pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Olivia reached out cautiously, holding the key above the fragment. The moment the two touched, a sharp jolt ran through her body, and the clearing erupted in light. Images flooded her mind. Visions of other realms, vast and alien, filled with towering structures made of shifting colors and landscapes that defied logic. Shadowy figures moved in the distance, their forms indistinct but menacing. And then she saw Evelyn, standing at the edge of a swirling void, her form flickering between human and something else entirely. "You think this ends here?" Evelyn's voice echoed in Olivia's ears, cold and mocking. "You've only scratched the surface." "No," Olivia whispered, clutching the key tightly. "It ends now." Summoning every ounce of courage, she pressed the key firmly into the fragment. A deafening crack split the air, and the glowing symbols flared brightly before, dimming completely. The void shuddered, collapsing inward like a dying star. For a brief moment, Olivia thought she heard Evelyn scream, but then the sound faded, replaced by an overwhelming silence. When the light finally subsided, the clearing was empty. The fragment of the ring lay dark and inert, its power extinguished. Olivia slumped to the ground, exhausted but relieved. Whatever connection Evelyn had forged between worlds had been severed, at least for now. Back in Willow Creek, Olivia returned to her routine, though she remained vigilant. She checked the woods regularly, searching for any signs of unnatural activity. So far, there were none. Ethan continued to recover, slowly regaining his strength and sense of self. Though he rarely spoke about what had happened, Olivia could tell he was healing. Sometimes when they sat together watching the sunset, he would smile, a small tentative gesture that gave her hope. Ryan never reappeared, but Olivia liked to think he had found peace wherever he had gone. His sacrifice hadn't been forgotten, and neither had his warnings. The townspeople avoided the forest near the highway, and stories of the glowing ring became cautionary tales told to keep children safe. As autumn turned to winter, snow blanketed Willow Creek, muffling the sounds of daily life. The Carters' house remained empty, its windows dark and its garden frozen under a layer of frost. But for Olivia and Ethan, the future felt brighter. They had survived something unimaginable and emerged stronger because of it. Still, Olivia kept the key hidden away just in case. She didn't know what challenges might lie ahead, but she was ready to face them, if they came. For now, though, the town was quiet, and the whispers in the woods had fallen silent. Somewhere deep in the forest, the wind stirred, carrying echoes of secrets long buried. But for the people of Willow Creek, life went on, untouched by the shadows that lingered just beyond the edge of the world.